Yo, what is up, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. And yes, I know it's been a long time. I haven't uploaded in what seems like a good solid month. And I apologize for that. I kind of fell off of the YouTube grind. But now we're back again, and I thought what better of a way than to stir up more drama on my channel than do another tier list. Yes, we're going to do another tier list. But this time, I'm setting a guideline. This time, we will do a tier list using only FFLogs. So we will be using the charts FFLogs provides for us to rank every job. And yes, I know this isn't the best way to do it, but at least now everybody can see the metrics that I'm using to do this tier list. So there shouldn't be any real arguments with it when I'm showing you the metrics. We're going by what we see on FFLogs, and that's pretty much it. But before we go ahead and get into today's video, go ahead, be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this, and be sure to hit the notification bell for every time I upload, because I promise now that I'm going to upload more often. With all that being said, let's go ahead and get into today's video. And we're here. Okay. So right now we're looking at FFLogs. Like I said, it's going to be the metrics of what we base everything off of. But we will only be using mainly the RDPS and ADPS. We might use the NDPS just as a third metric to base where we should put the jobs. But for the main point, it's going to be the RDPS and the ADPS. So let's go ahead and get right into it. And for the first job, we have the Astrologian. So if we're looking at the RDPS, the Astrologian, it's looking like the lowest of the healers in damage on the RDPS. And its high is almost on par with the White Mage, but it's not telling the full story. So let's go ahead and go over to the ADPS, where the Astrologian is just not performing. It's, if we are looking at the charts, it's just not performing on damage wise. And in Final Fantasy, let's just be honest, you're supposed to be doing damage. Like if we scroll down, Astrologian's score is a 41.37 with a max of 50.96. That's kind of lackluster. There's not that big of a change from that, and it's just not performing. Now, if we go back to the ADPS, it's 49.85 to 63.58, which is better, but it's just not. Its parse is even low. Like, it's not performing, guys. And if we go to the NDPS, which isn't really going to be one of the main metrics, it's still not performing on that. So for me, I'm going to have to put it as a C tier job. Now, I guess I should have clarified this at the beginning of the video, but every job we're looking at is viable. As shown on this list, it has been used to clear this raid. So it's not to say that it can't be done or it's not optimal. It's just not the greatest. It can be done. All jobs can be played on this level, just at the same skill level as everybody else. It can't do as much as others can. So with that being said, don't get upset if your job is lower on the list. That's not a metric of how much you should enjoy your job. If you enjoy your job, play your job. Don't let this hold you back from what you enjoy. With all that being said, let's go ahead and get into the Bard. And as we all know, the range DPS is struggling. But if we're looking from this, it is doing better than its counterparts, which are the Dancers. Now, we've got to be honest, it's not doing but about 1% more. So it's not greatly different on the RDPS. Now, if we go to the ADPS, it's about, once again, 1 to 2% difference. It's not underperforming, but it's not the greatest of the range DPS. But I think there's a little bit more to this than is leading on. But if we're looking at the Machinist to the Bard, it's all barely even a percent. Like, they are almost on top of each other on the RDPS. But when it comes to, hold on, what's this? It's a bigger gap when you look at the ADPS. So, with that being said, the Bard is the middle of the road of the range DPS. And let me say this, I've played the Bard quite a bit. I enjoy the Bard. I like its playstyle. I like its design. I do think all range DPSs should be doing a little bit more damage. I do not control the balance of the game. So, I can't fix the problems that are there when it comes to lacking damage. So, for me, I'm going to have to say the Bard's a B tier. Based off of this logs, it's middle of the road. It's not amazing. It's not perfect. It's not terrible, but it's not bad. I mean, it's the second lowest out of the DPSs, which is bad, but there's not really much I can say. I can't rate, if I was to rate it any lower, just for the need to rate it lower, I would say C. But I'm not going to be overly harsh on a job because there's no reason to. A B pretty much visualizes where it is as a job. It's not the greatest. It's not the best. It gets the job done. Now we're on to everybody's, or the poster child of Final Fantasy. Let's just say it is the poster child of Final Fantasy. The Black Mage. Yoshi P's favorite job. Which we all know that job does damage. And it's ridiculous. But if we're looking at it, it is the best. It is the fourth best performing on the RDPS. Which you would think is low for the Black Mage. But you go to the ADPS and it's second to the Samurai. But it does have a higher peak than the Samurai. So, what that tells you is the best of best Black Mages can do more than the best of best Samurais. But, on average, Samurai tends to be a better job to play than the Black Mage. And that is what FFLogs is showing. Do I think that is true? Yes. I think the Samurai is a much easier job compared to the Black Mage. But I also think the Black Mage just doesn't perform very well as a team. But when ranking it on the list, sadly enough, I would only give it an A. I think, well, no, I can't say that. I'd have to give it an S because its FFLog shows that it's the second best in the ADPS and it's the fourth best on RDPS. So it's up there, and if I'm rating it that low, then I'm not doing justice to the fact that we're using this as the metrics. So let's go ahead and let's use our third metric in DPS. And it's number 1. So with that being said, I was torn between A and C. Or S, not C. S, and we're just going to give it an S tier. It is performing top of the charts on all DPS charts. And I believe that we should follow the metrics. That way we don't have anybody saying, I don't know what this is based off of. Well, it's based off of this logs. So, there's the metrics. Now we're into the Dancer. And we've kind of seen the story on the Dancer. It's kind of lacking in damage. This job was very powerful and went to not very powerful. Now, If we go to the 8 DPS, it tells the same story. It's just not that powerful. Now if we go to the N DPS, it's just lacking. So looking at the logs, it's in the same boat as the Astrologian. It's a C tier. It's playable. It's good for the team. But your damage just isn't there. And I don't want to speedrun this, but your damage is just not there. Now we're on to the Dark Knight. And if we're looking at the R DPS, the Dark Knight is the highest in tanks. It's highest in tanks. And why I say this, I'm going to rank the DPS harder than I'll rank. Put it this way, the best tank will be an S tier because it is the best tank. The lowest DPS will be a C tier because it is the lowest DPS. So like, I would give the Sage an S because it is the highest healer damage, while the Dark Knight is the highest tank damage, would also get an S, but other jobs will just struggle. Because you can't just look at this and just go, okay, Dark Knight, it's under the Dancer, so it also gets a C. It's not how it's going to work. Because you got to factor in the fact that it is the best tank damage-wise. Therefore, using that metric, it is the best S tier tank. If that makes any sense. I'm not going to rate the Dark Knight a C because its damage is not up there with the DPS, because it's inherently not a DPS job, not trying to do big parses like a Samurai or a Black Mage, if that makes any sense. I just had to clear that up because I feel like we're about to run head-to-head with that and have a problem with it. So if we're using the charts, the Dark Knight, damage-wise, is the best tank. So it is the S tier of tanks. The Gunbreaker is behind it, but the Dark Knight just hits that shelf. Now we're on to the Dragoon. A job that I enjoyed playing in base story and then just fell in love with the ninja. But as we see here, it is third on the RDPS. So it's performing pretty good. But it is sixth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Sixth on the ADPS, which means it's still performing. But out of all the melee DPSs, it's not the highest. So we will take that into it and we will look at it. And we're looking at it. And since we're kind of ranking in classifications of jobs, is a better way to put it. Like melee DPSs, this is the best melee DPS. This is the best caster. That's how we're going to kind of rank it. We're going to kind of ABCD it based on classification of jobs from like melee, caster, healer, tank. That'll be a better way of doing it. But we are still mainly using the metrics of FFLogs. So with doing this, it's a B tier job. It's not the greatest, but it's not far behind of any of the other melee DPSs. So it's not a C tier because it's just that much missing compared to the Monk, the Ninja, the Reaper. And of course, Samurai, it's got a bigger gap because Samurai is the better one. But that's neither here nor there. Now we're on to the Gunbreaker. And the Gunbreaker is the second best in RDPS. It is the second best in ADPS. And using the third metric, it is the second best in that too. So with the Gunbreaker, you got to give it A. Without strolling too far from the metric that we're using, if I had to flip-flop it, the Dark Knight and the Gunbreaker would be on the same tier. Because the Dark Knight is squishy, but this isn't going to reflect that. This is just reflecting their damage. So based strictly off of damage, the Dark Knight is better than the Gunbreaker. But I know, in actual uses case, the Gunbreaker is more tanky than the Dark Knight. Therefore, I would prefer to have a Gunbreaker to a Dark Knight. But using the metric, once again, the Dark Knight gets the S, the Gunbreaker gets the A. And our next job is Machinist. And Machinist is the best performing out of the ranged DPS. It is the best. But with that being said, I can't just sit here and say it's an S tier because it is the best. Because once again, it's still not performing very well. I would give this an A and just put it above Bard. That's how I'm going to do that. I don't think any of the ranged DPS are S tier because I just feel like the ranged DPS as a whole is lacking damage compared to every other DPS. So I can't say the Machinist is an S tier because it does the most damage. All ranged DPSs are lacking. This is getting way too confusing, way too quick, mainly because I know with this chart I should just be ranking S's off of that, but you can't just do that. But I'm taking the metrics into account and being like, okay, well, they're all just lacking damage, but I can't say it's an S tier just because it's the greatest range DPS. Jesus Christ. Monk. Now, the Monk is the second best on a DPS, falling just that much behind my favorite job, Ninja, which I think is a great job that doesn't need buff, but I kind of want more to the kit, even though it's supposed to be a hard job. I find it not that hard. But the Monk is the third best performing out of that. Now, I've been hypercritical of the Monk in the past. I've brought why I don't like its playstyle into it, why I don't like its glamours, why I don't like this. It's an A tier job. It's an A tier job based on damage. It's amazing. It's not the greatest, but it's trading blows with the ninja, and it's also trading blows with the samurai. But it's not as strong as the samurai and A DPS, but it's just stronger in the R DPS, so it's an A tier. It's an A tier. Now we're on to the ninja, which is much the same story. It's the best performing R DPS, but it's behind the monk in the A DPS, but the N DPS, it's under the Reaper, so it's I just gotta put it as an A2 because it's tit for tat, and I can't say it's the greatest, but I can't say it's that much lower than the monk. That wouldn't make any sense. So I gotta say it's an A tier. Now we're on to the Paladin, and the Paladin is it's the struggle bus of the DPS charts on tanks. The Paladin lacks damage right now, which is sad because it's the poster child for Endwalker. So I would think they would have made it really strong. No, they just made it really flashy. It does have the best tanking kit or mitigation, but it's just lacking damage. So, with that being said, I think it's a B tier when it comes to the tanks. I think it and the Warrior just kind of go tit for tat. I would say these two go tit for tat because you look and it has a higher max if you're that good, but on average, Warrior's easier to play, so it doesn't struggle as much. And they're tit for tat on A DPS, and if we look at N DPS, exact same. They're blow for blow. So we'll just put both of them at B and leave A and S for Gunbreaker and Dark Knight. Now we're on to the Reaper, which is the fun job to play. And it used to be really strong. Right now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 on the R DPS. And it is the 5th on A DPS. And it is the 4th on N DPS. So it's kind of trading blows with other jobs. And I think a safe bet would be put it with the Monk, Ninja, and Reaper, all three together, because they go tit for tat and things. But I also think I could justifiably say B tier and say that it's kind of like the Dragoon. It performs in some areas, while other areas it doesn't. This one's a little bit harder because I want to say it's an A tier. Realistically, I could move all the melees into A tiers and just say they go tit for tat, and really it's some perform better in some areas and some perform better than others. But for the sake, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to say all melees are A tier. For the most part. Most melees are A tier. I think it does go tit for tat. Looking at the list, we have Dragoon third here, but Dragoon is sixth here or fifth here. Sixth. And then we have the Dragoon that's sixth here again. So the Dragoon goes tit for tat, and like it's our DPS is real high. Its ADPS is middle of the road. ADPS is middle of the road. No, I'm just gonna have to say that the Dragoon's got to stay B tier. I almost want to say the only reason the Reaper gets up there is because it starts passing the Ninja for the most part. But do I move the Reaper down? I don't want to. I'll just bring the Dragoon up. I think I can argue more that the Dragoon is an A tier more than I can argue that the Reaper is a B tier, if that makes any sense. I think I have a better leg to stand on with Reaper being an A tier and Dragoon also being an A tier than rather than saying the Dragoon's a B tier and the Reaper's a B tier. I think that's a hard leg to stand on. I think all the melee DPSs in this game are the melee DPSs are in a good spot. They're in a really good spot. Now, the Red Mage. Casters. We're on to some more casters. And ADPS, it's lacking compared to the Summoner, or RDPS. ADPS tells a similar story, and pretty much it. Now, if we go to NDPS, it's still showing the same story. But this doesn't tell the full list, but if we're going off the DPS metrics, it's a B tier. It is a B tier because it just doesn't bring the damage. It just doesn't. Now, we're going to kind of speed this up because we're getting into a longer video. I know some people don't like longer videos. Now we're into the Sage. Sage is the best performing of the healers, and there's no arguing about that. It's an S tier. I think it has a leg to stand on. It definitely stands on it pretty well. Is it an S tier and overall? No. There's some things I would kind of change about healers in general. I think their kits are a little too easy. I think they've dumbed healing down to where a lot of people are falling off healing and don't like playing it anymore because there's not like... We always had a problem of healing's too hard so people don't want to play, or healers are too easy and it's not fun to play. So we're kind of in the not fun to play part. I know some people won't agree with that, but it's something that I've seen in the community that more people tend not to play healers because it's a one-button spam. Now the Samurai. Of course, the Samurai is the A tier melees. It's right here. It's 5th. It's 1. It's 2. So it goes 5th, 1, and 2. So it's just an A tier. It's or S tier. It is the S tier melee job. And I think you could argue that you can move the Ninja up and make it an S tier. And you can move the Monk up and move it an S tier. But for the sake of it, the Samurai does generally perform slightly better than both of them, so I'll just go ahead and give it an S tier to have one melee that stands out above the other. I will say there was some patches, or a patch, that they pulled an no on the Samurai, and I think they should bring it back and do other things to get rid of the button bloat. But I'm not the person to be arguing about that, because it's not my place to argue. Now on to the Scholar. Now the Scholar is the 3rd best of the healers, but it has a high peak in ADPS. And doesn't have as high as an ADPS or an NDPS. So, I'm saying Scholar is a B tier. I think it's a B tier off its metrics we're looking at here. It performs, it's solid, it's probably my favorite healer to play, but that's not the metrics we're looking at. It is just the 3rd best healer, and it feels right to put it between the Sage and the Astrologian. Now, with that being said, let's just go ahead and mark the final healer. And we gotta make it an A tier because it does perform almost on par with the Sage. But there is story to be told about why the White Mage isn't the end all be all between it. There's a little bit more to the jobs like tanks and healers. There's a little bit to their story because it's not going to tell you the mitigation and it's not going to tell you really how much healing, resurrection stuff goes in that. That's also why the Red Mage is so low, because it's not taking into account its other versatilities and utilities. It's just its DPS. That is the problem with using this metric, is we're just solely looking at the DPS. But at least now we have something to say this is what the metrics are. Now on to the Summoner. The Summoner for our DPS is above the Red Mage. It's above the Red Mage. It's above the Red Mage. And once again, it is above the Red Mage. So we all know what that means. It gets to be an A tier. And let's be honest, the rework on the Summoner made it 10 times easier to play. Its rotation is dumbed down to so much, and it has cool glamours and cool eggies. So it's an A tier. But just looking at the logs, it's an A tier just because of its damage. Now, with all that being said, this is the tier list. I think there is some things I would change. I would probably move the Ninja and Monk up, but we're going to leave them here just because it's a safe pick. I'm pretty overall happy with this. I think if I was to do another one using FFLogs, I think I need to start taking into account other things that FFLogs doesn't. But for now, I think this is a good solid tier list, just strictly based off of FFLogs DPS charts. That's all this is based off of. But with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to hit the bell notification if you want to see more from this channel, because I promise once again, we're going to upload more. And see you in the next video. Peace.